Hey everyone, this is Cary and Matt Dernlan on the podcast The Way, and today we're discussing on your own training sessions and kind of leading this podcast into more coaching areas. And Matt, how you doing, man?
Good. Man,
good week.
Good week. It's been interesting. You know, before we jump into this, before I jumped into RUDIS, and I was talking to Jesse, our owner and our CEO, and there was some obvious, I don't want to say anxiety jumping into a new profession, jump from coaching into the business world. And he said something to me that was pretty profound that's really stuck to me a year and a half ago before I jumped on. And I was like, he's like, well, what are you thinking about this? He goes, I think you're going to make a natural fit, and it's going to be a seamless, progression right into the business world. And I was like, I've heard all these similarities between, athletics and business and, connected parts and different things. And he said, it's really the case. He's like so we're 5 years old, and he is like, you know what, Matt? He's like, the first 3 years when I was running the business, he said I was a wrestling coach trying to act like a businessman. And he said, now in the last 2 years, it seemed like I've made the transition from being a businessman, and now I'm trying to act like a wrestling coach, because there's so many applicable parts that can relate to coaching and the business world. And I look at where we are right now in the heart of our busy season, and basically we're peaking. This is what we pointed towards for the last 9 months of the year, is to peak for the last 3 months of the busy season. And I see so many correlations now between all the processes we've tried to create in the last year and everything we've tried to fine tune, and the ownership that we've tried to pass on to each one of our team members and each one of our departments and our segments. And, it kind of relates to what we're talking about today is, getting people to take ownership of their own world, of their own operation, of their own segment of the business, whatever it is, be it a designer, a salesman, a purchaser, someone in finance, someone in fulfillment, and, getting them to buy in and to take ownership of honing their own craft and how important that is. Right. Like it's easy, and I think it's easy for athletes all the time to look to you, right? Say, hey coach, just tell me what I need to do, right? What do I need to do? And I'll do it. And you love athletes like that, right? But at a certain point, that's not going to be enough. If you're just looking to you and doing whatever's on the board or whatever you lay out at the beginning of practice, they're like, okay, I'll do it. I'm bought in. I'm ready to go. But one of the biggest things in creating ownership and really, achieving your goals or giving yourself the best possibility of that is really like taking ownership of it. And that is like what we want to talk about today. And that's really, creating your own workouts and the importance of doing your own workouts. So that's a little sidebar to kind of transition into kind of what we were discussing today.
Yeah. Well, I find it absolutely critical. Like, I think you'll know how healthy your program is when you can give your guys what we call the guys' term is the OYO, on your own workout day. And there's a few ways you can start teaching guys to do this. But you have to establish a team. As far as I'm concerned, you're healthy when you can walk into a room and the staff is not running anything and not dictating anything, and you can hear the noise of people's feet hitting the mat. You can see guys sweating. You can see guys working, and you don't see a bunch of people standing around and talking. You have a motivated team, an enthused team, and a mature team. Like, they're into it. And there's a few ways we get there, and we'll talk about it, like some of the ways I did it, and I don't know how you did it in your room, but when I first got to Campbell, we were trying to get this program going and get it established, and over time it involved me getting a staff put in place and getting all the support staff in place, and then building up your team, and then you have to start giving them more and more ownership. Now, I'll tell you why I found it important for us to talk about it. Honestly, we do a lot of on your own workouts, right? Where, I might write something. We have a whiteboard in the room, and I might write something down and say, okay, these are the, I want to see 80 to 90 reps in these areas, and I'll write it down, but it's on you. Like, and then after that, I'll put at the bottom, then at that point, it's whatever you want to work on. So there's days when I have an on your own where it's structured, but I'm not running anything and my staff's not running anything. And then there's days where it's completely on your own. Like, it's whatever you exactly want to work on for yourself that day. And I couldn't have done that. You couldn't have done that when you first got to Binghamton, and I couldn't do that when I first got to Campbell. I mean, they hadn't been trained up, and they hadn't had enough of a particular mindset and focus in the program. But the reason I find it extremely important, because we've been doing these, and I every now and then I'll have discussions with my team, and I had one of my members, one of the guys on the team, say to me, he goes, we haven't had as many on your owns. And I sat back and I was like, you know what? You're right. I've been kind of structuring and hand-holding, haven't I? A little too much. And enough so that, one of the guys has said, when are we going to get on our own or stuff? And it's easy as a coach to get caught up sometimes. You just feel like, oh, we got to work here. We got to work here. We got to work here. And that's, for me, I knew that was a healthy sign. The guys are missing those workouts. They wanted them. They were craving them. It's a sign that they're into it. And they're taking ownership, like like you said, you and Jesse, and talking about running RUDIS. But I was like, man, these guys want some more ownership of their own training. That's when things are healthy. And but you have to have the right team. I know if I was coaching high school, and I think you would agree, I'm not going to let a bunch of high school kids just run on their own until you've brought that team along and coached them up. You got a guy that just started in the program. He doesn't even know what on your own means. He doesn't even know where to begin. If I was strictly back in high school, I would always say, here's your on your own. Here's definitely the things I want you to work on. And I would put my upperclassmen with my younger guys, which we'll do now sometimes, especially if it's a bottom day. We have freshmen transitioning into college, and that's always a problem for them. And we'll say it's a bottom work and upperclassmen with a freshman. And that's how I would do it. But I think as coaches, the longer you hold hands and the longer you're doing everything for them, you're not coaching them up. If you're doing it all and you're structuring everything, you got to get these people where they're structuring things themselves. And, I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's how I feel about it. I think it's important that you have those.
Yeah, I mean, because ultimately at the end of the day, when they step in that circle, yeah, they've got their team on the sidelines, they've got you in the corner, but they're still on their own. I mean, they've got to learn how to adapt, how to think, how to make adjustments on their own. And if you've never been given that opportunity to think on your own, to take ownership about what you want to do and how you want to do it, it's going to be hard to take complete ownership of your actions once you get out there in competition. But like you said, you can't just throw people in the deep end and expect them to know what they need to do and how to structure and what to get out of their individual workout or their on your own workouts. Correct. Right. So I think it's like you said, when you first got to Campbell and I got up to Binghamton, you actually have to lay the groundwork and the fundamentals, things that we've discussed throughout the program. Like you've got to set the bar, you've got to lay the expectations, and you've got to get a level of maturity, like you said, with the program. I mean, even if you have 30 freshmen that are totally bought in, and like these guys are on my page right now, they're committed, they're all in. Like that would be shame on you to let 30 freshmen go on their own, right? So you've got to get some maturity in the program. You got to get a couple laps around the track to really get a firm understanding about what the expectations are. And as long as you've built in and instilled the expectation and the ownership that it takes, then it's so rewarding when you see guys running on their own. It's like it's like when you take the training wheels off your kid for the first time and they're actually doing it on their own. They're either going to succeed or they're going to wipe out miserably, right? And either one's going to be a learning experience. So I'm sure I had a number of examples where I thought certain guys were ready or the program was ready, and I released them and they went on their own and they weren't quite there. And I don't know, if you've got some experience with that. I'm sure you do. But I'm like, man, I thought we were ready, but we're not quite there. And so that's where I had to reel it back in. And for me, I think it took almost 3 years, not quite a full 3 years, by the end of year 2, I'm like, we're almost there. We're getting there. We're showing signs of maturity, showing signs of ownership, showing signs of the internal leadership that's going to guide the guys on the team. Because even in these individual workouts or on your own workouts, you do see other guys stepping up and older guys or even young guys stepping up and kind of making sure the accountability system within the group is in place. And I think that that's critical. That I think once you develop that strong internal leadership on your team, I think that's the first step in knowing that the team is ready to start leading themselves in some capacity.
Right. Well, that's how I build it up. When I first did it, and when you said 3 years, I feel like 3 years was the mark for me too. Right. I had 2 really rough years at Campbell. The first one was 0-12, and then we weren't much better the next year. But by the third year, my guys, I feel the third year still weren't ready to do. I had a couple guys that were ready to do their on their own, and they would come in and do that stuff in their own drills and stuff. But what I really started to do was lay down. I would bring in the 4 or 5 captains and say, look, I'm not gonna. And we don't really even have captains. I always go back and forth on this one. But so I consider everybody to be a leader. That's what you're striving to do. I don't really like to, pinpoint and say this guy's a captain and you're not deserving of a captain. I never really bought into that stuff. But the leadership is definitely needed. But I would bring in, 5 or 6 guys and say, look, here's the workout. I've written it out, but I need you to run it. I need you to actually structure this and run it. And, make sure that the guys are moving, because I wanted them to start, buying in. But the other thing I think you get with it, and I didn't realize, you don't realize you're doing these things, but we all know, like, if I don't like my coaches, right? If I don't trust them, you can dislike a boss, but he can still be a good boss, and he's good at it. And a coach can be the same way. But if you really have that trust in that relationship, and that's really what you do when you start doing that. You're telling your guys, man, I trust you to bust your own butts. I trust you to know what you need and get done. And that's one thing I always stress in my program, like a big one for us. We use the word trust a lot. And I tell them all the time, hey, look, if you are jammed up academically in school and you just and you're not procrastinating, you're not wasting time, you're just a little overwhelmed and you need some more time, and especially, when you're in a preseason kind of phase, when you text me and say, hey, look, I need this session off. I'll make it up at this time, but I'm jammed academically. I tell them I'm going to say okay until I feel like I'm being abused, until I feel like, this is a common occurrence with this one particular person, and the other guys seem to be getting in there, and the other guys seem to be doing okay. Why is it always you? Then I'm going to start doing my homework and find out if you're just abusing me, and that's how I enter every relationship with everybody new on my team. I don't go to the freshmen and say, don't you dare miss a practice. Yeah, I still want to be informed. I want to know why you're not going to be there. But if it's an academic issue, we're building this relationship. I've got certain guys on my team that, they just stop my office and they're, coach, hey, can I talk to you? I need time. I'm like, for what? And it's a matter of fact, I'm like, take it. Because they've been with me 3 or 4 years, and their training and their academics and everything show that, I have no reason not to trust this guy. You know what I mean? But freshmen have to establish that, with everybody on my staff. And that's really what on your own sessions do, as well. You're establishing that I trust you to know what you need. And I do that because I don't have all the answers all the time for all the guys at that moment. And, maybe we've been focused on something, but you need, help in this, one particular area. And, and that's what you have to have. And that's really what that on your own does too, as far as I'm concerned. It continues to build that relationship between you and a coach. And again, if I'm coaching lower, not lower level guys, but younger age groups in high school and that, then I'm probably structuring it, laying it on the board. I'm probably sending the workout beforehand, laying it out, saying, this is what I would like to see. And it's on you guys today. And I would always write in there, this is where you should be getting your conditioning in this part of the drill. This is where you should have a very focused technical mind in this part of the drill. And then we might say something like, okay, then 10 to 15 minutes of live, and I want you to have 3 partners, 3 5-minute goals. And I want you to pick a partner that's in the middle for you, and a partner that you feel like you can hit your stuff on, and a partner that you're going to have to fight to get through it. and and you're giving them ownership and on your own, as far as I'm concerned, important. I know for me, they were important. I will say, no knock at my coaches when I was at Penn State. I had a different group of guys, but there were times I felt really constricted, and I felt like, man, I'm drilling the same stuff every single day, and I'm going nuts. And I needed those creativity days. Sometimes you just wanted to play wrestle day. You just wanted to get in there and have fun and roll around with Abe or Hughes or those guys when I was at Penn State. And that I felt really constricted. And then when I went to Lock Haven, I was completely unrestricted, with the staff that I had there, and so, but I was mature enough that I could organize my own stuff, and so that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, and I think the only other point that I would add into that, like we've been talking about, the trust and the maturity aspect when it relates to the guys in the team, but I think it's equally as important, like, to establish that trust and maturity within your coaching staff as well, right? I think you kind of referenced that a little bit with when you were at Penn State, your experience at Penn State, and you needed that. You knew when you needed that. You needed to break away. You needed to do something on your own. A lot of coaches, they don't trust when they say they don't trust their athletes to do it on their own. In essence, what they're saying, they don't trust what they've done, right? They don't trust how they've been leading these guys, how they've been guiding these guys along. So for me, I think it's a big level of maturity and trust for the coach himself to understand, like, no, I've laid the groundwork for these guys. They know the expectation. They know the accountability. They know where we're trying to go. And if I'm trying to hold this so close to the vest that I've got to control everything, that I've got to dictate every single day, every single practice, how it's got to be laid out, then you're basically telling the guys, number one, you don't trust them. And number two, you don't really trust yourself and what you've been doing.
I'll tell you, Matt, this has happened in my office. Like, one, if you work with me, I'm always hitting you with sarcasm in a joking way. And I just got lucky, and I just got a hire of a new, recruiting coordinator / director of ops. And she is awesome in the office. And, it's the first time I'm sitting back saying, okay, I can put something on her, and I have no anxiety about doing a follow-up, right? And so I have trust in her to get done. We got a new social media director, and this is where my sarcasm always comes in, and he's getting to know me now. But, he's in charge of social media. When we first, gave him the job, we lay down, this is what we expect, this is what we want. It's yours, go. Because we as a staff, all of us, between me and my assistants, we are always doing some kind of social media, right? We know for recruiting and promotion of the program, you have to have it. It's important. In today's world with social media, it's an important part of the job. It's an area that you don't want to have to deal with as a head coach, but you better have somebody in there. And, it was literally just yesterday in the office, and he spun around in his chair, and we were sitting in there talking, and he goes down, do you want to release these interviews at this time or that time? And I just sat there and I wouldn't answer him. I just stared at him. And he goes, I go, I don't understand what you're asking me. He goes, do you want to do these interviews? I said, I still don't understand a word you're saying to me. And he's looking, and everybody's looking because my staff knows me, and he's still new. And I said, basically, if I have to answer this question, then I'm still doing the social media and I'm still in the role, and that was a joke among us. But that was my way of saying, man, run with it. Go, like, do what you do. That's why I hired you. I'm trusting you. Get it done. And he got it. And all my assistants were laughing because that's what I'll do. When my guys come up to me, they'll ask me something, what I consider a small problem or something dumb. And I just won't answer them. And they'll just stand there. And then all the upperclassmen will laugh because they'll be like, did you really need to ask that question, or did you already have the answer? And again, as an adult, I can, as they say, bust on him a little bit, but he got it. And he's doing a great job for us. And I think he was just always worried about upsetting the butt, but I'm like, you've done great work. You don't have to ask me anything. You know more about it than I do, so I'm not the social media director. And that's just and that's back to trust and staff and a team and on your own workouts, you can do it.
No, I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up. I think it's important. It's an important thing. It's for every athlete. If they really want to take ownership of their career, if you really want to really elevate, and as a coach, if you really want to elevate and maximize everything you're getting out of your team, out of your staff, out of your support system, that trust, that ownership that you pass on to them is critical. It's critical.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, this is Matt and Cary on the podcast The Way. And again, if you got coaching questions, fire them our way. And Matt, I'll talk to you next week. Okay, man?
Sounds good, Cary. Good catching up.
All right, buddy.